Welcome back to the CFB Battle Royale. I am your host Greggles, and we are going to be doing the Pac-12. So it is a 12-team conference, as the name implies, and let's get started, shall we? Just like all the other past games, it's going to be a few turns before anything exciting happens. So while we are going to the beginning, let's introduce our teams. Up in the top in Arizona Stadium, we have Arizona. Going clockwise from there in Sun Devil Stadium, we have Arizona State. Next up in California Memorial Stadium, we have California Berkeley, or just Cal. Next in Folsom Field, we have Colorado. Then after that in Autzen Stadium, we have Oregon. Then after that in Reser, I'm not 100% sure how you pronounce it. Let's just go with Reser Stadium. We'll pick that one, I guess. We have Oregon State. Down in Stanford Stadium, we have Stanford. Over in the Rose Bowl, we have UCLA. In the LA Memorial Coliseum, we have USC. Over in Rice-Eccles Stadium, we have Utah. Up in Husky Stadium, we have Washington. And over in Martin Stadium, we have Washington State. So those are your teams competing today for the Pac-12 championship. The winner will go on to face East Carolina, Syracuse, Michigan State, Texas, Rice, Notre Dame, Akron, and Nevada in the championship game. So, and the winner of the SEC and the Sun Belt, which will be coming up tomorrow starting at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Alright, so looking at the game so far, Stanford has built a scout unit who is out and exploring the world. Everyone else focusing on building and improving their tiles, doing what they can to get ready for the part that actually matters in building a military. So, we're in turn 31, entering turn 32, which is still early on. We're not going to see a military unit probably till around turn 50 or so. Maybe, usually closer to 80. But the last game, everyone started really early. They were all overachievers in the Mountain West, so. It is the exact same map as the Mountain West. It is a 12-team map. So everything should be pretty much the same as what we saw in the last game. Looking at expansions, it looks like Washington and Washington State both are expanding towards each other, so the Apple Cup should be heating up there a little bit. Arizona moving towards the middle. Arizona State moving kind of towards the middle, kind of towards California. Cal moving towards Colorado. Colorado moving towards around that lake, but up towards Cal. Oregon State are moving towards each other as well for the Civil War. UCLA, USC right up on each other's borders already. Stanford trying to get up towards the middle. And Utah just kind of going straight for the middle. So the rivalries are actually heating up, moving towards each other for once, which is good to see. Luckily, in the Pac-12, a lot of the rivalries also fit, into that alphabetical order structure. So USC, UCLA, Washington, Washington State, Arizona, Arizona State, Oregon, Oregon State. So that really helps out for rivalry placement and should lead to some good fights. And I do see up here in Washington State, in Martin Stadium, the Cougars have built a catapult. I think they are the first team to do so. They are the first military unit that I can see. So Washington State starts out the game with a military unit and a catapult. And by turn 58, 59-ish, that's not bad at all. So I'm sure other teams are not far behind. So that should be, we should be getting a war here hopefully soon. Everyone's close together. Space is starting to get limited, so we may see some territorial wars. Washington State already with 2 catapults before any other team that I can see builds a single one. So good on Washington State. Good early start here. If they can get another catapult, maybe a few melee units, they could take on one of their neighbors. Just pick their weakest one or whichever one you feel like it. Washington, we can see an Apple Cup. This could be your chance to actually beat the Huskies for the first time in a long time. So I see a great general for Utah, a great general for USC. Nothing else. There's a great general in Washington State and Arizona as well. So Washington State doing really well, but just because they start out the game early with the military does not mean that they're in the best position to win or the best position to... they're not that far ahead. Like, all it takes is just some really bad luck, some really bad wars, bad timing, and you're out. So just because you start well does not mean that you're going to ride that momentum all the way to the end. So let's see here. I don't see anything else. There we go. California does now have a catapult. No one else. Oh, there's UCLA also has a catapult. So some teams are starting to get it. A lot of teams are starting to get their great generals in, and they can use those for their upcoming wars. But no other turns, or no other teams, I mean, have anything yet besides the ones I mentioned. We're just going to kind of keep going around the map and see what happens. We're starting to see somewhat of that little ripple effect that I love so much in this map, where you can see everyone doing their turn in a row, but we're not at quite enough units to do that yet. So coming up on turn 92 here, I see Colorado now also has a catapult. No one else? Cal does. I think I already mentioned Cal having one. Yeah, so Colorado adds a catapult in Folsom Field. I actually was in Colorado not too long ago, and I went to all of the FBS stadiums there. I didn't get to go to a game because it was unfortunately it didn't work out. I was there in October, so I was outside of Colorado Stadium during a game. I think they played Arizona. I think it was outside during the Arizona-Colorado game in Folsom Field, but I was unfortunately unable to go. I saw Air Force's stadium from outside, which was really cool, and we drove around Colorado State's stadium, which is beautiful, up there in Fort Collins. So I want to get out there and go to an actual game, but we're going to have to wait at least another year or so before we can make it back out there. All right, so UCLA does have 2 catapults in the Rose Bowl Stadium territory. That's going to be good for them. I see great general for Colorado. Washington State's kind of slowed down their military production. They have the 2 catapults, but that's it so far. No one else has... Oh, there we go. Arizona State just built a catapult. So Arizona lagging behind, Washington lagging behind. Not too bad, though. It's still early. And like I said, we don't usually see wars for another 50 or so turns. So there we go. California has been denounced by Colorado. That's just a space issue. Both teams are pretty equal militarily. California does now have a second catapult that they just built that turn. So maybe Colorado will rethink that denouncement. I doubt it. Arizona State gets a second catapult right out the bat from the first one. So good for them. 3 catapults now for UCLA. 1 for Stanford that I can see. 2 for Utah. So everyone's starting to bulk up. We'll probably see the first war here in the next 30 turns or so. I'm surprised Washington State has slowed down so much. They were so good out the bat. Now they're actually behind. California now has the 3 catapults and a swordsman that we usually see from the first aggressive teams. Utah has their three catapults. UCLA has a 3 and a swordsman. Stanford with 2. Neither of the Oregon teams have a military at all yet. Arizona does not have one. Washington does not have one, and that's it. So we'll see who's going to be aggressive here between UCLA and California. Arizona State catching up there. Washington State again lagging behind. So I'm getting a lot, for those of you who watch the Mountain West, California's giving me a lot of the same vibes that Fresno State had. But unfortunately, Fresno State had the bad luck of... it wasn't even bad luck, it was just a bad decision of them to go to war and take over cities on the other side of the map here. And doing that split their military, which meant a joint war, which happened on both sides of the continent. There was nothing they could do to defend both sides, and they lost their original capital and got stuck on the west. They made the best of the situation, managing to get all the way to second place in a pretty decent... They were even with Nevada in terms of territories, but they just were so far behind in terms of military size that Nevada sprung and took over, and it was a very easy win. But I think part of that had to do with they didn't have their original capital. They were behind in technology and stuff from that. So Arizona State does now have Sparky, their unique unit. So if I were them, I would go to war soon with him, because he's going to be more powerful than some of your other random standard units that you would see. And they're kind of probing against California right now. They're not going to go to war. California would probably destroy them in a war right now. Arizona State just doesn't have the same military strength as California, but that can easily be changed. If I were Arizona State, I would pick Arizona, maybe even join a joint war with Washington State against the Wildcats. and see what you can do with it. Here's the military strength right now. So Cal is above and beyond everyone else. UCLA not too far behind, just about a little over 100 points. Utah right here, Stanford down there, Washington State right there. So if I were Arizona State, who's in third, I would go to war against Arizona, who has no military. Maybe even get Washington State to join you. They don't have much of a military, so they're not much of a threat. They don't even have melee units. Now, they could join with you and then not actually send anybody, meaning that it's kind of just a war with you and some, like, cheerleading from Washington State, essentially. But Arizona has no military, so that's still a pretty easy war to take. You're going to have that warmonger penalty from Cal, so they may invade you, which you have to be careful for. Down here in the south, Stanford does now have their cardinal tree, or it's just the tree. The Stanford tree, and its terrifying face. So they can go after a team like Oregon State, who has no military. Oregon has no military. So if you didn't take Oregon State, then you can just jump right over to Oregon from there. That's going to get you heavy warmonger penalties, but Colorado, who's Oregon's neighbor, is not going to do much right now. You do have to worry about UCLA on your other side, who could do some damage. If I were the Bruins, I would go against USC in California, or the LA Memorial Coliseum, because they're not doing anything at the moment. We have a golden age, that's good for us. Not really, we don't use it. So there's our first war. Turn 167, we see Utah and UCLA go in a joint war effort against USC. The Trojans have a single catapult defending their city, and that's not really great for defense. That's really good for city capture. UCLA was late to the start there. They've lost the jump. Utah has managed to come in there and get right up against the LA Coliseum, but unfortunately for the Utes, USC does start building their Tommy Trojan unit a little bit too late there. But their melee units are front and center and just going to start getting destroyed by city fire until he's gone, and then UCLA can just come in here and snipe it. Oregon State does build a great library, so that gives them a technological advantage. Utah is pulling out slightly, and now UCLA has their chance to strike, and they don't seem to be using it yet. USC is going to start producing Tommy Trojans. There goes a single catapult into USC territory. He's taken out immediately. And then Tommy Trojan's taken out in retaliation, but neither team really committing to this fight with USC. Up in the north, Cal and Arizona State are definitely fronting against each other. They're trying to aggressively cold war their militaries, it looks like, until one of them's going to break, and then that should be the declaration of war we're waiting for between the two teams. So USC is sending in military aggressively towards UCLA, but they're just getting ground up and spit back out. But that is keeping UCLA from invading themselves, so USC has not really seen an invasion since that initial Utah one. UCLA has not even tried to go into their territory with more than just a single unit at a time. So that war seems to be kind of sputtering, and nothing's really happening. It's early. That happens in early wars. You're not going to get immediate results from an early war. Washington State has built up their military strength, so now this is where Arizona would really benefit from a joint war with them against Arizona. But if Arizona goes to war at any point and is distracted enough, that's when they know Cal is going to pounce. So what they need to do is wait for Cal to go to war against Colorado, assuring them that they have some time to declare their own wars against Arizona. Because if they sit here and position themselves with California for dominance in the area and let Washington State declare war alone and go take Arizona, that's when they're in trouble. But nope, they're going to do it first. So Arizona State and Washington State do form a joint war against Arizona like I had hoped. And Arizona Stadium immediately begins to take damage. This is what I said they're worried about, though, because they've left Sun Devil Stadium open for an invasion by Cal. So they're going to need to take Arizona Stadium quickly and without losing much of their military force, which they're already starting to take losses. Washington State coming in there. It's down to the yellow. Now down to the red. They need to send in. These are chariot archers. They can't attack. So Washington State has that position with the pikemen right there to take the city. Arizona State does get in there, though, with a Sun Devil and captures Arizona Stadium. Eliminating Arizona from the game. So that is an F in the chat for Arizona. And Arizona State comes through. They have that extra production to help with that war against California, which is inevitably coming, as you can see from how aggressively postured California is towards their territory. Down in the south here, USC does build the Terracotta Army, giving them an extra catapult, and that's it. That prevents a team like Cal and Arizona State and UCLA and Utah, who were both aggressively against you, and I think still currently at war, from building it themselves and upping their military strength even further. So yeah, there's UCLA sending in a single pikeman at a time to take on the LA Coliseum. That's not going to work. So they're not committing to a full front war here. There goes 2 units at once, but they're just getting bombarded on their way in, so that's not going to do much. And that's not going to win you any wars. Up here in the north, Washington still has not built, or they have a single military unit. Down here in the south, Oregon and Oregon State still have not built any military units whatsoever, so they are solidly in last place militarily, the 2 Oregon schools. At least of who's left. Arizona's definitely in dead last. But, yeah, if I were Oregon and Oregon State, take some of that, or especially Oregon, take some of that Nike money and, you know, build a military. But neither team is doing that right now, and Stanford is looking pretty powerful. Colorado's not, so you're okay. Oregon's okay, unless Cal wants to just go around them. But Oregon State, if I were you, I would be worried about Stanford invading, because they can totally see that you're just sitting there empty. Same for Washington. I mean, Washington State's right there. They can see it, and they know there's no military in there, and you're going to have a team is more likely to declare war on you if they know that you're weak. So seeing you have no military is going to just kind of entice that war against you from any team who has a larger military than you do, which for Oregon and Oregon State means any team in the game at this point. I mean, even Colorado has Chip, their buffalo mascot, who can fight. He is a melee unit. He can capture cities. So that's more of an effort than Oregon and Oregon State have, at least. They're trading with each other, which is weird for a rivalry that intense. So now with that extra city, Arizona State is using that to their advantage. They're building out Sparkies like they never could before, getting them on the front lines of Cal. So hopefully we'll see that war between Cal and Arizona State here soon. Utah State does build the Great Wall, so that'll prevent any team from really invading, but they weren't really in much of a position to worry. They have USC, who I believe they're still at war with. We can double check real quick. Yes, Utah is still at war with USC, and so they have the wall there to protect them. But USC is not doing any invading. They have no military. They have a single catapult who's been guarding their city from UCLA this whole time, and Washington has just single composite bowman who's just watching Washington State stare at them. So Utah was the team that probably needed this the least, but that will help them out when it eventually gets to that point. So for now, that's a good... I mean, we've seen it time and time again where the Great Wall has led a team to go from possibly eliminated to probably the top 3 or 4 most of these games. So they're doing great. Like, it's a great thing to build. We've seen a lot of terracotta armies being built by teams with weak armies to prevent another team from getting it. We've seen a lot of great walls being built by a team who's usually about to get eliminated or in a very bad position, which carries them towards the end of the game. So, I mean, we saw Air Force, I think, came in 3rd, and a few other teams from there. So Air Force was just today. It was during this recording session, so I remember it. But there's a somewhat decent push by UCLA into USC territory, but again, not enough. And now USC is starting to build horsemen and actual military units of their own. So these two teams just keep trading off military units to sacrifice against their own city bombardments. Now Utah is getting in there. So the Utes finally feel like they want to attack again. This would be a good time for a joint invasion by UCLA and Utah, but that's not going to happen. So Utah gets pushed back into their wall. UCLA now jumps in and gets destroyed. So there's that peace deal between UCLA and USC and Utah and USC. So I want to see these two go to war. That's what I'm waiting for. These two, I mean, Arizona State's bulked up. I think they have the largest military in the game now. And finally, Oregon and Oregon State have decided to build military units. I see a horseman and a trebuchet versus a knight and a composite bowman. Stanford lost a great opportunity there to attack. I mean, they had Oregon State with no military. UCLA was easily distracted with USC. Like, that was your moment to, and you have a huge military, so that was your moment to invade. If you're Stanford. Washington's starting to build a bit of a military themselves. So Washington State with their Butch T. Cougar. If you want a free city now, or not a free city, but a easier city, now's your time to invade Washington before they get too big. And it looks like Arizona State's grouping up. I saw them all go defensive there for a second, but then nothing came of that. So let's take a look real quick before any war is declared, just in case. Everyone's at war. There's some denouncements. They've denounced Utah and Cal and Colorado. But let's take a look at military strength here. So above and beyond is Arizona State. They're at the very top by a lot. California has actually plateaued here. And who's that in second? That's got to be Washington State? No, they're by Cal, so it's Stanford. Yeah, so Stanford and Arizona State are the top two by quite a lot. And that's why I'm saying Stanford should have taken advantage of Oregon State when they had the chance. Arizona State now has the ability to go after Cal. Cal, I think, was in third. And Arizona State is definitely moving into that direction. So Utah starts worshipping a pantheon, giving them faith in tundra, which is what all these mountain tiles are behind each of their capitals. And there we go. We finally get the war. Arizona State's going to go to war with Cal. And Arizona State can easily work through this Cal military, but I don't know if they're going to have the strength to get all the way up to California Memorial Stadium and capture it. So we will see there. Utah and Stanford are going to go to war against UCLA. Utah is going to have to go around USC, so I don't see them committing too much, but Stanford is going to use that second largest military and finally try to go after a city that they think they can get. Surprised they didn't go for Oregon State, but this is a good opportunity for them to expand. So like I said, Arizona State is doing a pretty good job of taking on Cal's military, but that's probably all they're going to get in this war. They're not going to have enough to take the military on and California Memorial Stadium, I don't think. They could surprise me. The Rose Bowl is immediately brought down to the red and captured. So that is going to be the end of UCLA. That is an F for the Bruins. And they have lost the Rose Bowl to Stanford's massive military. And so now if I'm Stanford, I would try to do what UCLA failed and go after USC, because on the other side now, Oregon State actually has some military units. So see what you can do. Go after Oregon State if you want, or Oregon State if you want, but I would go for USC. Because UCLA, and do it better than UCLA did. Go with your whole military at once instead of just sending in single units by single units where you're not going to capture anything. So up here in the north, California's army is basically gone. They've lost their military strength, but Arizona State, like I had said, has also lost their own. So they depleted California's military, but they're not going to have enough units to actually capture California Memorial Stadium. So they've set California back. And now it comes to the rebuilding part of the game where Arizona State can rebuild twice as fast as Cal can. So hopefully they can rebuild faster and then go to war again later. And that's when you're going to try to strike the city. That's at least the strategy I think they're going for. They do have to worry about Washington State over here, who has limited room left in their territories. And now has a very open Arizona Stadium right to the northeast of them. So Oregon looking kind of dangerous now. Colorado's slowly starting to build their own military again. Washington's looking pretty good now. Washington State is breaking out. I could see them declaring war on Arizona State or Washington themselves. Arizona State's left Arizona Stadium surrounded by one trebuchet, and that's it. Are they gearing up to try to go after California Memorial Stadium now? I don't think that's a good idea. You just got to be careful with Washington State. This is where I say make peace and then rebuild. They've taken California's workers, so California has nothing. They have a single caravan to their name, and that's it. Down here in the south, Stanford's rebuilding very quickly as well. Oregon's starting to break out a bit. Utah's looking pretty good. USC's slowly recovering from their two-front war and starting to get their military back up to a respectable level. And this is where I said that two stadium helps Arizona State, is Arizona State now has a lot more units. California still hasn't built a single one. And they don't have that worker left. We saw that worker get captured a few turns ago. he could repair and rebuild some of their stuff, but they have to get a worker back if they want any of these tiles to be usable again. And meanwhile, Arizona State can still invade. There's still a war, so we'll see what happens there. Stanford's on the move towards Oregon State, but I don't think they're going to group up for war. I think they're just trying to shift within their territory. So USC builds Notre Dame. They can't let that rivalry go. And Arizona State is going to make that push into Cal territory. They're going to go after California Memorial Stadium. We saw it blink twice now per turn, but it's healing faster than they can damage it. Now they're getting it to the point where it's starting to take permanent hold on damage. And they bring it down to just under half health with plenty of units to take it, and they do. So Arizona State captures California Memorial Stadium, knocking Cal out of the game. That is an F in the chat for Cal. And now Arizona State is the first team to 3 cities. So that's going to really help their military. If I were Washington State, this would be the time you invade. You don't want to let them sit on 3 cities and rebuild back up to strength, or you're going to be in a lot of trouble later on down the road. If I were Stanford, I would take either probably USC. If you want to get really ballsy with it, go after Oregon State. Just to make sure that you're on par with Arizona State move for move and city for city. Because you can't let them get away with building at 3 cities for so long. So maybe a joint war against the Sun Devils would help. There's that declaration of war from Stanford against USC. So they know what they're doing. They know they want to stay matched in city counts with the leader if they want a chance of surviving later on down the road. Now Arizona State's not like they're in first solidly right now, but they're not. It's not a stronghold on first. If you have a joint declaration of war by Colorado, Oregon, Washington State, and Washington against you, or any of them, if 3 or 4 teams go to war against you at once and commit to that war, you're in trouble. Like no matter how many cities you have, you're going to be in trouble. Instead, Washington State is going to have Washington declare war on them, and the Huskies are going to invade, and the Apple Cup is going to begin. So Washington State does not seem to have the same military strength as Washington does. Well, they do, but they're all mostly down here. So let's stay over here on the West Coast, see if we can map or watch both of them happen at the same time. Martin Stadium is not taking damage yet. Neither is the LA Coliseum, but Stanford is just kind of taking out the military units first. Same with Washington against the Cougars. Once the military is down enough to where they can get to the stadium kind of uncontested, that's when you'll start seeing stadium damage. So Stanford's about that point. Washington State's almost there. They have a few more units to take care of. Now Washington's basically at that point. And there goes the damage to LA Coliseum. It flashed into the yellow. Now it's permanently in the yellow. Not permanent, but it's staying in the yellow. Now it's about halfway. Martin Stadium was starting to take damage, but it's not enough. It healed itself back to health. LA Coliseum is now down to the low yellow, about a quarter health. Now down to the red. Stanford has a single pikeman in the area, or 2 pikemen, with none left reserve, so they have to keep them alive. Him being in the water is not going to be good for them. Never mind, they have a tree in the area. Utah's going to declare war against USC. They're going to try to rush in and steal this from Stanford. Martin Stadium down to just under half health up here in the north. And who's going to get LA Coliseum? It's not going to be Stanford or Utah this turn. Arizona State's on the move. We'll see where they're going to go here in a second. Looks like they're going after Washington State. Someone just got captured. It was Washington State. So Washington wins the Apple Cup for another year. They eliminate Washington State. So that's an F in the chat for Washington State as the Huskies capture Martin Stadium again. People with the pointy sticks, Arizona State is up and above. Oregon State surprisingly in second place after being taking so long to get into the game militarily. Oregon in fourth, another team that kind of dragged their feet, but is now in a good position. Stanford all the way down in sixth. That war took a very heavy toll on them. Same for Washington, taking Washington State. So this is where I think Arizona State's going to invade Washington here because they have the opportunity. Oregon State's going to invade Stanford, and again, that's going to be huge for the Beavers. Taking advantage of a weakened Stanford. Arizona State's on their way south, so we may see the Sun Devils doing the same thing here. And I mean, Stanford got that warmonger penalty for taking the Coliseum, and especially in the Rose Bowl. So both stadiums being in Stanford's control is not good for them. They're going to have to defend themselves, and now all of the big teams that have waited and built their military strength are going to declare war on them. Arizona State gets down towards Oregon and then splits off. So they may have actually been going for Oregon and then realized that they were a bigger military than they thought. Oregon State has Stanford Stadium down to the red and captures it. So Stanford loses their capital. They're not out of the game yet. They still have 2 more. But they make peace. So Oregon State manages to get Stanford. But then as soon as they make peace with Oregon State, Oregon, Washington, and Arizona State all declare war on Stanford at the same time as well. Luckily for Stanford, that's not Utah. Utah was not one of those. So Oregon's going to have to go around Oregon State. Arizona State's going to have to travel across the continent and may make the same mistakes that Fresno State made in the Mountain West and control 2 halves of the game board at the same time. And there's the problem for Stanford is Utah now joins in the fight. And they have the military right up against the LA Coliseum. So can Stanford hold on with 2 cities and a very weakened military against 3 potential powerhouses teams? We'll see. Arizona State's on the way down. They're passing by Washington. Notice how they're kind of scoping out Washington's military on their way down, seeing if it's worth invading them if they can't get what they want out of Stanford. Stanford does build a pantheon of gods. They're going to need it after this invasion's over because the LA Coliseum's immediately down to half health from just 1 turn of attacking. Now it's down to the deep red. Arizona State's on the way. They're surrounding Utah, it looks like. They may actually be going for Utah and just using this war with Stanford to get their guys into position without notice. Oregon founds Buddhism in Autzen Stadium as Utah moves down towards the Rose Bowl to eliminate Stanford. So will they get it? Stanford had a huge military, and this is what I was saying. They had the number 2 military in the game, but they just got so aggressive with it that warmonger penalties and the loss of military strength from all the fighting just made them cease to exist, and then everyone declared war on them at once. Big power. So that's the thing Arizona State needs to be careful with. If they were to declare war on Washington, let's say, or Colorado more likely, if they took out Colorado and took their capital and had Oregon, Oregon State, Washington declare war on them at once, that's going to be something that it's going to be very hard for Arizona State to come out of untouched or unscathed. So the Rose Bowl is down to 0, or basically 0 health. They have a pikeman in the area, and Utah does it. So Utah gets in there, takes the Rose Bowl, and eliminates Stanford from the game. So that is an F in the chat for Stanford. Alrighty, so now here come all the announcements for Oregon State, or for Utah. The first one from Oregon State. So Oregon and Colorado both have 1 city apiece. Everyone else has at least 2. If I were Oregon, I would think about taking Colorado on, maybe getting yourself that 2nd city. Arizona State is going to go to war with Washington here very soon. You can see them all bulking up in the north. And there's that declaration of war. So Arizona State going to pile into Washington territory, trying to take Martin Stadium from the Huskies. But Washington's going to put up a fight. They're not going to go easily. Now Arizona State's going to also declare war on Utah. They may be getting a bit too ambitious because if they lose all these military units and Colorado wants to go for California Memorial Stadium, they could take it. Utah does land bomb Washington, but unfortunately with that mountain there, they only got a mountain tile out of it, which is useless. So not a great land bomb there by Utah against Washington, but good effort. Martin Stadium down to half health. Washington not really sending all of their units. They have both Dubs and a few other military units around Husky Stadium. I guess they want to keep that defended if they need to as a last resort, because Martin Stadium has been captured by Arizona State. Washington's sending in units to recapture it back, but Arizona State has a huge reserve over here by Arizona Stadium. Now would be the great time to go after California Memorial Stadium again if you were Colorado or Oregon. Utah needs time to rebuild after their large war against Stanford. Oregon State and Oregon look like they're getting ready to go to war. Washington does recapture Martin Stadium from Arizona State, but the Sun Devils should easily be able to take this back. And so here goes their effort. Oregon State and Oregon both on the move, not sure who they're going after. It looks like it's going to be Washington, which if you're Oregon State, that's the wrong move to make. Actually, it may be Utah. It's going to be Arizona State. So there we go. That's the right move. Arizona State makes peace with Washington. They're going to go to war with with Oregon State. Colorado State declares war against Arizona State. This is what I'm saying. They got aggressive. They lost a lot of that military strength fighting Washington. They did get Martin Stadium out of it, but they could lose California Memorial Stadium and more if Oregon State can successfully take something. So Colorado immediately gets California Memorial State taking damage. Oregon State taking care of distracting the military up in the north, basically allowing Colorado to take the city with no real hesitation. It's down to no health, and there goes. Colorado takes California Memorial Stadium from Arizona State. The Arizona State military is decimated at the moment, so, and they just lost one city production. They're back down to 3 cities, where Colorado now has 2. Oregon State bringing the fight to Sun Devil Stadium itself. If Oregon wants to get involved, now would be a good time. While Oregon State's away, Utah declares war against the Utes. Oregon declares war against the Beavers. So all the teams away, they actually both just helped Arizona State a lot by declaring those wars against the 2 teams that are kind of putting the fight against Arizona State. But so they both want Oregon State's territories. This is the best move for Oregon. I don't fault them for this. Utah also. Just trying to. It's their wars of opportunity, more so than anything. Oregon needs it. Utah doesn't necessarily need it as bad, but having 4 cities would be great. So I don't fault them for that at all. Oregon's doing a great job of getting rid of the remaining Oregon State military, but they're also having the problem where Oregon State is focusing on the Oregon invasion and not the Utah one. So with that war going on, Oregon State's going to pull out most of their efforts against Arizona State, and California, there's the peace deal. And now it's going to be Colorado versus Arizona State. Luckily, Colorado has more military units than Arizona State does at the moment, but the Sun Devils can rebuild 1 city faster than than Colorado can. Utah has Stanford Stadium down to about half health. Oregon starting to do damage to Research Stadium, but Oregon State's out of military units. Stanford Stadium down to the red. If Oregon wants to try and snipe Stanford Stadium, that seems to be what they're doing. They're moving guys into position for it. Will they do it? Utah got out of the area. Utah pulled back, so they just gave Oregon the opportunity to take it, but they're not making use of it yet. Here comes the second push by Utah. So Arizona State out of military units. Washington could invade and take Martin Stadium back if they wanted to. Now would be the perfect time to invade Arizona State. There we go. Oregon makes peace with Oregon State, and Oregon State just gave them Stanford Stadium in the peace deal. So they took it without needing the military to do so. They got a free city out of that. Denied Utah the city that they wanted, and Oregon State got to live with no military. So everyone's pretty much depleted militarily. Utah has quite a bit left, and Washington definitely has a lot left. But everyone else is kind of struggling from these wars. So Washington, if I were them, this would be the perfect time to invade, take Martin Stadium back, and hopefully maybe take Arizona Stadium and Sun Devil Stadium if you want it in a perfect world. Colorado is doing a great job of holding Arizona from advancing again, but I don't think they have the strength to really take Sun Devil Stadium especially, or any other city for that matter. Utah is doing a great job rebuilding. They have a lot of units on the border of Stanford Stadium. They may go to war with Oregon to take back what they feel like is theirs. So there goes that Washington State, or the Washington invasion of Arizona State. They're going to try to take Martin Stadium. Colorado's going to, Washington's also going to declare war on Colorado. Oregon's going to declare war on Colorado. So Washington's going to have to make their way around. They're not going to get there. Oregon doesn't have the military to really invade Colorado at the moment, and I think Utah may try to invade Oregon here soon. So if I were the Ducks, I would cool it with the war efforts. Washington does get Martin Stadium down to the red. This is probably going to be the capture of it. Nope, this turn will be. There we go. So Washington takes Martin Stadium back. Arizona State down to just 2 cities, and Washington pressing Arizona Stadium right now. And they should be able to take it. If they want to take Arizona Stadium, I think they can. So, actually, they may just go straight for Sun Devil. Yeah, they're going to go straight for Sun Devil Stadium. Because, I mean, if you can take the capital, why don't you? That's a huge boom for you. Every wonder is probably there that Arizona State owns. And you can already start damaging the city. Arizona State builds a cannon for some reason, which won't do great defensively. Sun Devil Stadium's down to the red, but Washington needs to get one of these Dubs units in there to actually capture it. Down in the south, Colorado and Oregon are both just kind of in a small slap fight. No real damage is going to be done in that fight. So hold on just one second. I'm going to cough real quick. I'm going to mute myself. All right, we're back. Sorry about that. So, yeah, they need to get this Dubs over to Sun Devil Stadium to capture it, and I think he's on the way. He can do it. He has plenty of health, and Sun Devil Stadium has no health whatsoever, so this should be the capture that they need. They just got to get a crossbowman out of the way so they can do it. Now Dubs is going to retreat. So Washington's going to make peace with Colorado. Not sure why there's a Dubs down here in the south. Colorado and Oregon still doing what they can. Oregon's going to be in trouble from Utah here in a minute, I have a feeling. All right, so there we go. Colorado makes peace with Oregon, and Colorado gets a musketman into position to snipe Sun Devil Stadium from Washington, and I think they're going to do it. Maybe not. The musketman pulled back. There he is. So Washington doesn't have units in the area anymore. There's the musketman that's going to take it right there. He doesn't do it yet. Somehow manages to not take the city. Now there's another one in position. There we go. So Colorado is the one who comes through and does what Washington could not and takes Sun Devil Stadium from Arizona State. That is a huge blow to the Sun Devils. They're now stuck in just Arizona Stadium. They've lost any wonders they had, any science output they were getting from that city is now gone. So Arizona State flew a little too close to the sun there and is now paying the ultimate price for it. And that's what I was saying. You have the largest military, you're looking great, but just a wrong move and you're gone. And they just got a bit too aggressive. They spread themselves too thin in their wars, and now they're paying the price for it. Utah is loaded. Arizona State is broke. And everyone else, I mean, Arizona State, Washington, and Oregon State have basically no money. Everyone else is doing great, but Utah can just buy armies at will. I think Utah's in the best position at the moment. So Utah's still at war with Oregon State, it looks like. They're kind of fighting this war around Oregon's Stanford Stadium territory. Let's double check. Oh, that's the wrong one. That's not what we're looking for. Let's double check here with the info addict. What? Look at that. Look at the Arizona State Army. They were huge, and then they've just dropped, started to come back, and then all the way to the bottom. And now it looks like Utah is top dog. So that just shows you how fickle it can be. Cal's gone, and Stanford's gone. So a lot of these teams that I was highlighting are gone. They're no longer really powerhouses. So Utah is at war with Oregon State. They're fighting over Oregon, and everyone else is just announcing there's like an outline of wars, and then so that's the one thing keeping Utah from really dominating right now is Oregon State's been kind of keeping them in check. And if I were Utah, I would make peace with Oregon State, I mean, and declare war on Oregon. I would declare war on the Ducks, take Stanford Stadium so you can at least unite that. Oregon's not going to be able to get units around Oregon State here to defend themselves. So that's a free city for you to take, honestly, if you can get the military strategy correct. Colorado State is in a great position. They picked the most opportune time to go to war and eliminate Arizona State, basically. Like, they were in Folsom Field, and this was all Arizona State territory right here. Waited till Arizona State was decimated from fighting Washington, took California Memorial Stadium, then took some time just fighting Arizona State, keeping their military low till Washington invaded, took Martin Stadium, brought Sun Devil Stadium down to no health, and then they just came in and sniped it. So very good moves by Colorado right there. They're playing a really good game right now. Now they're tied for the first most number of cities. So they're doing a great job. They're rebuilding. They're using those 3 cities that they have to build their military strength up, and now they look to be positioning themselves for a war with Oregon. Up in the north, Colorado or Washington is starting to do damage to Arizona Stadium, but with what they have there, I don't think that's going to be enough. Utah is going to declare war against Colorado. Will we see other teams do it? Yes. Oregon's going to also declare war against Colorado. So here comes the warmonger penalties against Colorado, but they've had some time to plan for this. They've built up their military strength. So can they hold it? If they lose Folsom Field to Oregon, things are going to look really bad for them. Wow, Washington did it. Up here in the north, Washington has taken Arizona Stadium with just some from crossbowmen and a husky, and they have eliminated Arizona State from the game. So the Sun Devils are out. That is an F in the chat for the Sun Devils. And now we are down to 5, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, we're down to 5. So down here, Oregon is at Folsom Field. This war above Stanford Stadium is just crazy right now between Oregon State and Utah. Oregon is not committed to actually taking Folsom Field. These two teams are just throwing military units at each other. Oregon still has not done damage to Folsom Field. They're trying, but they go to set up and then pull back. Utah is not going to get to Colorado unopposed. Oregon State's going to just fight them and stop them every time they try to make their way over there. So there's the peace deal between Oregon State and Utah. So now Utah's free to go to Colorado unfought. And will they get there in time before Oregon can take what they want? Because Folsom Field is starting to take damage. This is the Colorado capital, so that's going to be a little harder to take compared to Cal's old capital and Arizona State's old capital. So Oregon's pulling back. They don't want to waste their whole military. They're going to let Utah have a shot. Or they were just regrouping. They're going back in again. They're going to contradict me. So Oregon needs to be careful with Oregon State now at peace and having a very cooped up military in a very empty Stanford Stadium. So Folsom Field beginning to take damage again. Oregon doing what they can to take care of Colorado's military and prevent them from stopping them from taking Folsom Field, which is down to about a little over 3/4 of health. Now healing up a bit more. And yeah, Colorado's doing what they can to stop them. That's the 3-city advantage of Colorado. So what's Washington doing? They're at peace right now. Washington, Colorado, and Utah all have 3 cities apiece. Oregon's going to make peace with Colorado. If Oregon can take Oregon State, it'll be a 4-way tie with 3 cities apiece. Or if Oregon State can take Oregon, which is the more likely scenario looking at military strength right now, it would be a 3-way tie at 3 cities apiece. Now, just because it's a tie in city numbers does not mean it's going to be a tie militarily, because Oregon State will have fought for those and lost a lot of their military strength, whereas teams like Washington and Utah have been building up. Colorado's just having to defend themselves a lot right now, so they're going to be a little weaker. So let's see. For right now, everyone seems to be kind of not in a fighting mood. Global relations, the only war is Colorado and Utah, and that's timid at best. So we're going to just keep going, see what happens here. All right, Oregon State is happy. They can use that happiness to help their production boost, and then they can also go to war if they want to use that. Washington is ready to go. It looks like they're going to invade Colorado here very shortly. Sun Devil Stadium just open and ready to take. There's that declaration of war. So Washington's going to rush in and try and take Sun Devil Stadium from Colorado. The Buffs are going to make peace with Utah because they got to stop the invading Husky force. But their military is pretty much decimated. They're down to these few guys left over around Folsom Field, and they're not going to make it there in much time. So they have some guys at California Memorial Stadium. They're doing some good jobs, and I guess that was enough. So that was enough for Washington to realize it's not worth it. So the Huskies make peace. Maybe they see the problem in Utah in the west, but Utah seems to be going after Oregon here. So we're going to see, are they at war? Did I miss a war declaration? No, they're open borders with Oregon. And there is the declaration of war between Oregon State and Colorado against Oregon. Could this lead to Utah joining in, or is Utah just here to play peacekeeper for Stanford Stadium? They're not doing a great job. It's already taking damage. Utah has adopted autocracy. Oregon State rushing in and trying to take Stanford Stadium. It's down to half health already. Now it's down to the red. Autzen Stadium is probably not too far behind. Stanford Stadium down to the deep red, and Stanford Stadium has been captured. So Oregon State gets Stanford Stadium from Oregon, and now they can quickly move all their units across their territory to Autzen Stadium. Colorado doesn't have the fighting force to take it, so it's all Oregon State. Utah congratulates Oregon State on their victory by land bombing Stanford Stadium. And we do see them grouping up, so we may see them go to war here with Oregon State very soon. Which would save Oregon, which if they have open borders, that means they're probably friendly. And there's that declaration of war. So Utah's going to go to war with Oregon State. They're going to take Stanford Stadium themselves pretty easily. Autzen Stadium begins to take damage from Oregon State. It's down to already just over half health. So no damage to Stanford Stadium yet from Utah, but Autzen Stadium's in the red. And almost deep in the red, but Oregon State has a single rifleman to take it. So if that gets eliminated, then it's not happening. It's down to no health and that rifleman's full health. So this is probably the end of Oregon right here. Yes. So Oregon State takes Oregon's capital and eliminates Oregon from the game. So that is an F for the Ducks. Everyone is tied at 3 cities apiece right now between these last 4 teams. But like I said, it's not equal in military strength. The city count's equal, but not everything else is, because Oregon State is about to lose Stanford Stadium in probably the next turn or two. So down to the deep red, and there goes Stanford Stadium. So that tie was very short-lived, and Utah can just keep moving on and take Reser Stadium probably as well. So will they manage to do it? It doesn't look like it. Looks like they're kind of hesitating a little bit. And there's that push. So Utah does have Ute Thunder, which is their cannon replacement. I think it's an artillery cannon. And they are continuing that push here. It looks like now they're going to make that push for Reser Stadium. Washington is not really doing much to rebuild their military strength, it looks like. So Utah is definitely above and beyond in the lead right now. Colorado is rebuilding slowly. Washington's rebuilding very slowly. Oregon State having to deal with with the massive force of Utah pushing against them after just having the war with Oregon deplete a lot of their military strength. So Oregon State not in a great spot. And then here goes that push for Reser Stadium. It looks like they're trying to... Oregon State's trying to have a last stand here, and Utah's not having it. I mean, it definitely looks like Oregon State wants to make a push for Stanford Stadium, but they're not going to get that back. Hopefully Colorado doesn't join in this war against Oregon State, or it's all over for the Beavers. Airplanes have joined into the game. I just saw one. It's in Stanford Stadium. It's a triplane, so it's not that great, but it will help. Look at that. Just the amount of gold that Utah has is just double Colorado, who's in second, and 6 times the amount of Oregon State. So Oregon State adopts order, and I mean, with that much gold, they can buy 4 units at once. So their military is never going to be hurting for military strength. So things are looking very good for Utah at the moment. All right, we have a new ideology. Colorado's adopted autocracy. Their military is looking pretty good. Washington's finally starting to rebuild as well. If I were Washington, I would take advantage and try to take Rice-Eccles. I mean, that's the capital of Utah. That is their stronghold. And if you're able to rush in there and get it, then you have a great advantage over Utah. And that's one of their biggest production centers. I'm sure that's where a lot of their gold's coming from. Unfortunately, you are outgunned technologically with Great War Infantry to Riflemen, so you're going to have to do it quick if you want to capture it. Also, there's the Great Wall surrounding Rice-Eccles Stadium, which if you can get to artillery cannons and Great War Infantry yourself, that's not going to be that big of a deal. But you have to get there. So hopefully you can catch up quickly and maybe use this opportunity to attack a distracted Utah. So they do adopt order up in Washington. Colorado is trying to figure out if they want to invade Washington or Oregon State right now. I would pick Oregon State. Try to take those 2 cities yourself. The Beavers do have 1 aircraft. Colorado builds the Oracle. Yeah, Utah is in a very good place to start steamrolling. If they can just break through and capture 1 more stadium, they'll be in a very good spot. Because this late in the game now is when you can start really going for expanding very, very aggressively. So you got to be mindful of what Washington's doing. Colorado's looking really scary for Oregon State. But Utah's in a good position, especially with just how much money they have. All right, so Reser Stadium does start taking damage from air fire, and it goes immediately down to the red. So you just have to get one of these Great War Infantry in there. It has no health now. So there goes a Great War Infantry. It's up against the stadium walls. And there it goes. So Research Stadium has fallen. That's Oregon State's original capital, so that's a big loss for the Beavers. Now let's see if they do the same thing against Autzen Stadium. They're going to move some military units in. These Ute Thunders would be great to actually use, but right now they don't seem to want to. So they'd rather attack it with planes first and then just walk in and take it. Nope, there we go. So now Ute Thunder's been utilized, and Autzen Stadium brought down immediately to the red to no health. Now they just need to get this, there you go. So the cavalry's there to capture it, and there goes Autzen Stadium. So that is an elimination of Oregon State. That's an F in the chat for Oregon State. They have managed to make it to 4th place, but now Utah has 6 cities, so they have half of the cities in the game. That's a really good spot for them. They're moving all their units over to the West Coast as they land bomb Colorado. So they may try to fight a two-front war here against both Washington and Colorado at the same time. The Huskies see what they're doing. They're moving their military over there or not. Utah definitely starting to show aggression here. With all their military in the west, all their planes in the east. They're ready to go. So let's see what happens here. It looks like we're about to see a war between all 3 teams, it looks like. Maybe 2 teams against 1, but yeah, it's going to be basically Washington and Colorado defending themselves against Utah's presses. Yeah, 16 wonders for Utah, and I bet you most of them are in Rice Eccles. So if Washington can grab that, that's a huge advantage for the Huskies. Actually, you know what? I bet they aren't all in Rice Eccles because some other teams have built them, and Utah has assimilated them into their territory. So I bet it is spread out. But Rice Eccles is still, if you can capture it, that's a huge blow to Utah. That's probably their biggest. I mean, 27 population is huge, and that by far is their biggest, behind the Coliseum, which was their 2nd city. So, and right next to it. So if you can take Rice Eccles, that brings Utah down by a lot closer to your level at least. So let's see if they do end up in a joint war between Colorado and Washington. I could see them having trouble at first. But then it depends on military strategy. If they can take Husky Stadium while Colorado takes Autzen, like that's an okay trade. and if Colorado uses most of their military to take Autzen, whereas Utah's using planes and bombing and not using their full force, then Utah's in a great spot. Alright, so we should see a declaration of war here soon. We're going to go until turn 900 before I force an all-out war. Usually when I give that ultimatum, then that's when they decide to kick it into gear. So let's see if that works here. I mean, Utah is ready to go in Washington's territory, but Washington's also Washington. They have all their military positioned on the border, ready to attack, most likely ready to defend. And there's the land ships. So this is all, I mean, they're still fighting against riflemen with land ships. So that's 2 technologies improved. Like Colorado just got the Great War Infantry. So they're way ahead of everyone else. Hey, how's it going, Modest Mouse? Good to see you back. I am doing well. I hope you guys are all doing well here in all this crazy coronavirus stuff. So that's one of the reasons I'm doing this, is just because I want to provide something for people who are just stuck in their houses. So this is the last game we're doing today of this, and we're going to do another one tomorrow at 6 p.m. We're going to be doing the SEC and the Sun Belt. And yeah, this is just kind of a very, very small version of the Battle Royale I did last summer, and I'm going to do it again this summer. So if you want to tune into that, that starts June 2nd. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. So there's my little plug. So, all right, we're going to go to turn 900 until I force war. I think we'll get to there before it, but let's find out. Let's see if we do. Alrighty, so I don't know. I mean, Utah seems very hesitant. A lot of times when we get to this point where it's kind of a stalemate, militarily. The armies are hesitant to go to war. So that could be what we're seeing here, but as soon as war is declared, like these paratroopers and tanks are going to roll right over Washington and Colorado. So I think this one is heavily favored to be Utah, but we're going to give them their fair opportunity to defend themselves for Washington and Colorado. So we're going to give them time to get into position, get what they need to, but if they're just shuffling units around right now like they seem to be, like we could have some death and destruction instead. So we'll see what happens. People that like to smile the most. Happiness is actually surprisingly high for everybody. 8, 6, and 6. That's really good for teams at this stage in the game. Yeah, 9, 10. So yeah, Utah has Swoop, which is their unique aerial unit. So that'll come in handy in the war against Colorado and Washington if it comes to that. I mean, they're not the only ones. Colorado has great war bombers and triplanes, and Washington has great war bombers and triplanes. But it's not looking great. Like Utah has just so many units. All right, so I see full-on infantry now for Utah. We're about 60 turns away from an all-out war between all three teams. I'm wondering if I should do all three or if I should do 2-on-1. It would be more fair to have it 2-on-1, at least in terms of fair against Oregon, but at the same time, that puts Washington and Utah in an advantage. Or Washington and... I keep saying Oregon, sorry, I mean Utah. It's more fair for Washington and Colorado to join forces against Utah, but at the same time, it would be more fair to have everyone go to war against each other. So I think I'm going to do an all-out war in just under 50 turns and see what happens. Because I think no matter what, Utah's just going to plow through everybody, is my guess. So let's see what happens. Let's just keep going. We got 40 turns left. I see tanks now for Utah. Washington just now got to Great War Infantry. They still have a few Lancers, which aren't going to do anything. Excuse me. And, yeah. Oh, wow. All right, so Colorado's caught up. Colorado now has infantry of their own. Anti-aircraft will help against Utah's Swoop. If they still have Swoop. I don't know if they've upgraded him yet. Nope, they still definitely have Swoop. So we're getting closer. We have 30 turns left until war. Colorado actually seems kind of prepared for this. Unfortunately, they don't have the military, but luckily for them, the military is mostly on the Western Front against Washington. So Washington is very far behind militarily. So I see Washington folding and going first. Utah now does have the ability to build nuclear weapons. That's scary for if you're everybody else in this game. So let's see what happens here. Alrighty, so we are down to 15 turns until all-out war. And I think they know. They're getting into position. Utah's like scrambling to get their guys prepared. They build the Pentagon. And 8 turns left. Washington's so far behind militarily. Like, they still have Great War Infantry, Lancers to artillery cannons and full-on infantry, or mobile SAMs. It's just going to be tanks. It's going to be a bloodbath. 3 turns, 2 turns. Alright, so the next turn we are going to force a war between them because it seems to be a stalemate now. Just look at that military difference between the two, but if you add all of them together, it's still far behind. If you add Washington and Colorado together, it's still far behind Utah. So let's send them to war. It is turn 900. We're going to do all out, everybody against everybody. And we're going to end this thing. We're going to see what happens. Maybe they can hold on, but actually I'm going to have it's going to be, let's be real, it's Utah who would be the aggressor in this fight. So they're going to declare war against both Washington and Colorado. And Colorado, who's doing a little bit better than Washington will be the aggressor in that war. So, all right, so here goes the war. Oh, geez. Sorry about that. There goes the war. I guess my mountains are kind of glitching out now, or some of these. So here goes the fight. We'll just move. Sorry about the flashing mines over there. All right, so Folsom Field's immediately down to half health from all of the swoop attacks. Colorado's going to invade Washington up in the north, and Utah's just going to roll in and do what they do. So Washington's military is all trying to fight Colorado, it seems, with a small bit trying to defend Husky Stadium. Folsom Field's holding on longer than I thought it would. Utah is sending everything they got. So I mean, their home bases basically don't have any units left back in them, but they do capture Folsom Field from Colorado. So Colorado lost its original capital. They have not managed to take Husky Stadium yet, but I don't think they're trying fully. They're trying to do get rid of Colorado first, who's the much bigger threat. And Colorado's trying to take Arizona Stadium from Washington right now. But with everyone at Husky Stadium right now, this should be the end of Washington's capital. So there goes Husky Stadium, starting to take damage. California's Memorial Stadium, it goes down to the yellow immediately. Husky Stadium is captured, and California brought down to about half health. They move on to Martin Stadium as the other half on the East Coast. Works through California Memorial Stadium. Colorado does capture Arizona Stadium from Washington, so Martin Stadium's their last hope, and that is captured. So Washington has been eliminated from the game. That is an F in the chat for Washington. And now we're down to just 2, and those 2 are already at war, and war is ending fast. With Cal Stadium now squarely in Utah's possession, they can move on to the weakened Arizona Stadium and just take that right from Colorado without much of a fight. It's down to the red already, and there it goes. So Utah holds on to Arizona Stadium. Sun Devil Stadium down to half health. This is Colorado's last hope. They have a single artillery cannon in the city, another one just outside of its borders against a bunch of tanks and other stuff. Brought down to the red, and that is going to be it. So they are eliminated from the game. That is an F in the chat for Colorado, and congratulations to Utah for winning the Pac-12 round of the Micro Battle Royale. We're going to be doing the SEC and the Sun Belt tomorrow. If my voice holds up like it's been kind of doing for the past 2 days, we're going to also do the championship tomorrow as well. Let's see if we can do it. If not, we will do the championship on Friday. So I will see you all tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Greggles, and I will see you all later. Have a great night. Stay safe, everybody. Hope you are all doing well with everything going on. So have a good night. Bye, everyone.